Hey guys, we are going to start our test review. So let me share my screen and we will do the first thing, which is factoring. Okay, so when you factor, you need to remember your steps. So our first step is to do the GCF, so the greatest common factor. Okay, the second step is to put it in standard form. That means we're going to find A, B, and C. Okay, so let's check this out. So x squared minus 2x minus 63, there's not a greatest common factor. And so I already want to check if it's in standard form. X squared, x, and our constant. So this is in standard form. A is 1, B is -2, and C is -63. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and do our x-men. We're going to multiply A times C. Multiply A times C, that goes in the top. That gives us -63. And then we're going to add to B. Okay, so this is kind of our, the step 3 and 4 is the x that when we talk about x-men. Okay, so B is -2. So I'm looking to find two numbers that multiply to -63 and add to -2. So I'm going to use 7 and 9. So 7 and -9. And if I check that, then I can do 7 times -9. That gives me -63. And 7 plus -9, that gives me -2. So that worked, okay? So now using this, we're going to rewrite our expression using 4 terms. Okay, so this expression right now has 3 terms. So I'm going to change the middle term into 2 terms so that there's 4 terms total. Okay, that -2x is going to be the 7 and the -9 that we came up with. So x squared plus 7x minus 9x and minus 63. Okay, so I rewrite the expression using 4 terms, and then we go to our box. X squared, 7x, -9x, and -63. Okay, once we have those 4 terms in a box, then we look at side to side, x squared and 7x. What's the GCF there? I can divide by x. So we write an x out to the side. Okay, and then we've got a -9x and a -63. I can divide by a -9. So you always want to remember, if the first number, and I'm going to circle it right here so you can see it, is negative, then you're going to have a negative for your GCF right there, okay? And then after we've done this, the side to side, we're going to go up and down. So x squared and -9x is going to be x, and 7x and -63. So we're looking to see what's common with 7x and -63, and that's going to be 7. It's going to be positive because that is a positive 7x. So we leave it positive, all right? So then that gives us x minus 9 and x plus 7, and those are our factors. All right, let's go down and do our second one, which is the proficient one. This is where you have 5x squared plus 23x minus 10. Okay, I'm actually going to zoom this just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to do my steps. I'm going to look for that greatest common factor. There is nothing I can divide by with 5 and 23 and -10. It's already in standard form, so I'm going to go straight to the A, B, C. Okay, so A is 5 and B is 23 and C is -10. Okay, so when we do our x-men, we're going to do A times C and get -50, and then that's going to add to 23. Okay, so it has to multiply to 50 and add to 23. So that's going to be 25 and 2. And I need a positive 23, so my smaller number is going to be negative. Rewrite that using 4 terms. 5x squared plus 25x minus 2x minus 10. Okay, so there's our 4 terms. Put those in the box, and we get 5x squared, 25x, negative 2x, and negative 10. So 4 go in the box, and then we look at our GCF. 5x squared and 25x has a 5 and an x common. Okay, negative 2x and negative 10 is negative 2. And then 5x squared and negative 2x is just x, because one's a 5 and one's a 2. I can't divide by a common number. And then here we have just 5. So our answers are going to be 5x minus 2 and x plus 5. Okay. All right, and then our last one, we've got 10x squared minus 2x minus 12. So I always want to look for that greatest common factor first, and this one does have a greatest common factor. I can divide all of these by 2. So if I divide these by 2, I'm going to be left with 5x squared minus 13x minus 6. Okay, that's going to be, this 2 is going to be part of our answer. Okay, that greatest common factor is part of the answer. I want to make sure and include that in my answer, but I also don't want to keep using it the whole time. So I kind of just put it there at the end as we work through these steps, okay? So A is 5, B is negative 13, and C is negative 6. Do our X-Men, and we've got A times C, and add up to B. All right, now I'm going to write down the 15 and the 2 and the 10 and the 3, because I want you to recognize there's 2 ways that I can get 13. I can either subtract 2 and get 13, or I can add 10 and 3 and get 13. And since they're negative, this would both have to be negative. But if I multiplied 2 negatives together, I'd get a positive 30. So the 10 and the 3 will not work. So I have to use the 15 and the 2. Negative 15 and positive 2 is how I'm going to get that middle term to be negative. Okay, so 5x squared minus 15x plus 2x and minus 6. So those are our 4 terms. Okay, put them in the box. And we get 5x squared minus 15x and 2x minus 6. Take out the greatest common factor. This is 5x. There's a 2 here. Okay, if I look at top to bottom, this is going to be just x, and then negative 15 and negative 6 will be negative 3. Okay, so our answer is going to be 5x plus 2 and x minus 3. And don't forget that too. Now, I left some room here because I want to go over the grouping method for those of you that use grouping. Okay, so if you do use grouping, you want to group them into these 2 groups and then take out the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor of these 2 terms is 5x, and that leaves me with x minus 3. And then the greatest common factor between these 2 terms is positive 2, and that leaves me with x minus 3. Okay, so once I've done that, where I've broken them into 2 groups and then taken the GCF out of each group, then I look for the one that's common there, and it's x minus 3. So x minus 3 is one of the factors, okay? And then the other factor is what's left over, 5x and positive 2. Okay, and then writing it all together with our GCF, we're going to have 2 times x minus 3 times 5x plus 2, okay? And that is going to be how we do those factoring problems on the review. And let me or your teacher know if you have any questions.